everyone, and a massive, massive welcome to this very first episode of Break the Cycle. Today. My name is Farai Hobwana, your host. I'm buzzing with excitement because today isn't just any day. It's the beginning of our podcast journey together. A journey from just a spark of an idea fueled into reality by the incredible support of friends and family. And speaking of friends, it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce to our first ever guest, someone very special, Taffy Mazikana. Taffy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Farai. Really excited to be, I think, your first guest and to really open the floor to what are very important topics, especially in our community, in our culture, things that we need to address and really start to open up about. So thank you very much, and very honored and excited about our talk to come.
Thank you so much, Taffy. Taffy, I've got to say from the get-go that this podcast is as much your brainchild as it is mine. Your advice over the years, encouragement, unwavering support have been a beacon for me, especially through my personal rough patches. I'm eternally grateful for that, Taffy. So, Taffy, I think our relationship goes back to 2018. I'd like to believe when we first met in Sweden, Stockholm. It was a stunning wedding. Would you agree that it was absolutely unforgettable?
Yes, no, you've made it sound like it was my wedding, but it was definitely a fun wedding that we were both at, and I really enjoyed it. And you are right, it was stunning. Although my wedding is coming, so watch this space.
No, thanks. I would certainly would love to be a part of that if you invite me. And yeah. I remember that amidst the celebrations at that wedding, we also discovered our shared roots from Zimbabwe, our connection to Harare, and not to mention both of us being chartered accountants, turned Londoners with a fiery passion for business. And our bond over the years grew over countless meetings and meals in central London. And then we ventured into business together, didn't we, Taffy? Mine in fitness and yours in the mental health and in the wellness realm. But then you made a big move to South Africa. I think it was just right before the world turned upside down with the pandemic. And then you dived headfirst into the mental wellness sector. And Taffy, I'm sure our listeners are eager to just dive a bit deeper into your story. Who is Taffy Mazikana? What's the story behind your passion for mental health? Share with us your journey and how your experiences have shaped this mission to make a difference. Over to you, Taffy.
Wow, thanks so much for that. And that's a great chronology of sort of our journey together, which has also been amazing. And as you know, as you mentioned, we share that we are both originally from Zimbabwe, and mental health is not a topic that we have for ourselves growing up. So for me, it's quite unexpected that I find myself in this position talking about this topic on a daily basis. But as you mentioned there, the roots coming from Zimbabwe just was not a topic for us. And it's something that I never considered to be a thing that we do. However you define we, it's not even a we of Black or white Zimbabweans. I think Zimbabweans as a whole is not a topic that we encounter a lot, other than seeing it on TV that Americans go for therapy. And that's an American thing to do, but how does it relate to us? So I went along life and not really paying attention to this topic, not thinking it's something for me, but I think gradually having impacts over time. I now know with hindsight that it takes 10 years on average for a person to seek help for mental health difficulties. That's the global average. And I was definitely in that category, because now with hindsight, I can look back and say there was just a small accumulation of very normal things for which I didn't have the tools to sort of deal with. So coming out of high school, a lot of my, identity became attached to academic achievement. It's something that I understood. The input is that I study hard. The output is that I get a result, and I get the praise that comes with that. University, encouraged that feedback loop. So that was actually a booster in terms of the way I experience life is continued here, where you study, you get the result, and you get the outcome. But then I have to say the transition into work life, which is completely different in terms of that input and reward cycle, is something that was just a little minus. Not to say that it was a bad thing or something I couldn't handle, but just that I didn't have the skills in my arsenal. And it maybe just took a little bit of an edge away, if you like. And then going through life, these little things can happen, this relationship, or, life gets more complicated sometimes as you get older. So what I realized was around 2019, which is not long after we had met, I just came to a point where I felt like I could probably need help. I had felt it sometimes along the way, but I had never had any tangible way to address that. So in 2019, I was just very fortunate that these two things met, where I was in a position of feeling like I need help, but then I also stumbled across help in the form of the NHS website, which said I could self-refer myself in this area of mental health. Previously, when I had thought, I need help, my next step was, what do I do next? I was just confused. Do I Google for a psychologist? Do I talk to a doctor? Would I even be comfortable to talk to a doctor? But this form just made it seem very simple. They said, hey, you can self-refer yourself in this area of mental health. All you have to do is fill in these 4 or 5 details and we'll contact you. And sure enough, within that same week, they contacted me. They offered me that I could have face-to-face therapy, that I could have group therapy, or that I could try a self-guided digital therapy that they had been having good results with. So choosing that option of the self-guided care opened me to what you can get generally in mental health, but also what digital can do, and then what is mental health, and then it's not for just someone who's in America or someone who can afford this psychologist or etc. So that was my accidental journey, if you like, into just personally becoming aware, if you like, that mental health is something you can tackle early. You don't have to wait for 10, 12 years like I did, and there's avenues of help that are available.
That's amazing, Taffy. So, Taffy, tell me, what are your thoughts on stigma, and in particular, male's stigma around mental health?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think from a male perspective, we are taught to continue on. We're taught that you're not supposed to talk about certain things. And what I found interesting was, before I embarked on this journey for myself of actually taking action, I hadn't expressed a lot of things to anyone else. I just assumed that we all feel this way. And then when we go out into the world, we put on our armor or our shield or whatever we need, our facade. And then that's just how everyone operates. So we have our external, what we give out externally, and then what we feel internally. And it doesn't, and I didn't actually think that it was an issue or strange or rare or different that those things, or bad even, that those things were not aligned. I just assumed that that's just how it is, So I think as men, we are kind of less aware of the benefits of aligning our internal and external realities. And then I think as a second point, for men especially, but also I think for people, the idea of what is help has been, I think, grossly missold, because a lot of therapeutic techniques that are out there, we'll talk about cognitive behavioral therapy later. A lot of therapeutic techniques out there are actually about skill building. They're actually about empowering you to know more things and to have more skills in your arsenal. And it's no different from being a carpenter. If a carpenter rocks up to your house with no tools, I think you'll be a little bit concerned. That is this person going to be able to finish the job?
Of course.
If a carpenter rocks up with 3 tools, you'll be a little bit more encouraged. But what if that carpenter had 10, 12 tools? They have an entire bag. As soon as they see something that's unique to your house, they go, they pull that thing out and they use it. So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about building up the skills that we have to assess a situation and to be able to do something about it in our own way. So it's not saying this is how you do it, because the textbook, the skills of mental health are actually allowing you to understand what works for you and what tools work for you, and how do you use those tools, and in what situation. So it's an incredibly actually empowering thing to get quote unquote help. I'm not even sure if you can call it help because if anything, this is one of the greatest secrets of, you know, to me anyway, one of the great secrets of life that that actually you build yourself. It's not a tearing down process.
That's amazing, Taffy, that the example that you gave, it just makes it so clear to me that you want to go to someone who's got a wide range of tools, and they apply a tool that is specific to your need, because no one issue is the same across two different people. So I really appreciate that example. So Taffy, you have lived on at least 2 continents and several countries, and in your travels you'd have had exposure to different cultures. Can you tell me what role culture plays in mental health from your observations?
Yeah, no, it definitely plays a role. And I think when we think about the African context, sometimes we attach the idea that stigma is high in Africa, and stigma is low in Europe or in London or in the UK. So one of the first observations, things that I found interesting, was that in 2019, when I reached out for help to the UK NHS, I became passionate in that way about the type of things that are available. And I remember giving so many people the link to this link that I accidentally stumbled across.
You gave me the
started
link
giving it
as
to
well,
other people
Taffy.
to say,
You
did you
gave me
know
the
that
link as
there's
well.
all this free help that you don't even have to pay a cent for? And by the way, it's so accessible. And I was giving it to people. And one thing that I found interesting was a pattern where by men in the UK, including white men in the UK, would feel somewhat offended that I've offered them this link as though to say there's something wrong with them. And sometimes more than once, I think it was about 3 times, the person told me, I'll take that link because I think I know someone who needs it. So they were very
Okay.
adamant to make me walk away understanding that it's not for
Okay.
me. Here I am
Isn't for
saying,
them.
here's a link, use it or don't use it. I will never
Okay.
know. But then they wanted to make that clear that I'm okay, but I would take this link to give it to someone else who I think is not okay. So then that means that there is a very high stigma.
Okay. No, absolutely. That
In my
speaks to
small
the
anecdotal.
stigma element. No, absolutely. And
Yes.
we will stick in the link in the description, and please go in and take a look and access the free information that's available for your consumption. Taffy, can you share the inspiration behind founding VimboHealth.com? So that's spelled VIMBO health.com. And I would like you to focus particularly on the unique challenges in mental health that you aimed to address through that platform.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I felt very, I think, blessed to be in a place, in an environment where so much help was made available to me. And what I was stuck with was a little bit of a guilt that back home in Zimbabwe, in Africa, I'm currently now based in South Africa, our people don't have access to such similar resources. So that journey of offering people, seeing, the resistance to something that's so free and so available, I don't think sometimes people realize how lucky they are, that they have so much. And, there's a lot of things that we can say about the National Health Service in the UK, but it is incredible in so many ways, especially when you start to compare with other places where, there's just not people thinking about how can we help the common person, So that was my sort of over a period of 3 or 4 months, just a feeling that was sitting in me that this is strange, that we don't have these tools, especially digital tools, because we also don't have a lot of psychologists. We have the most countries with the fewest psychologists per capita are in Africa. So there was this mismatch. between availability and sort of what is out there. So that planted a seed in my mind. But what made the seed, in a way, become a reality was that as part of my travels in 2019, one of the things I did was visit my friend Trevor, who had now just relocated to America, and see how he's doing. And unbeknownst to me, his wife Sherry is trained in this form of cognitive behavioral therapy, which we call low intensity cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the type of the art of putting that into a digital format. And also, she had worked for the UK NHS, ironically, on the other side of the service that I received. And being that she's originally from Durban, South Africa herself, that seed was also in her from a practitioner perspective that these things work, but why aren't they being deployed? Why aren't they being used in our own settings as well? In addition, so that forming of I think belief in the power of digital, of firstly mental health, the power of what digital can do. Not that digital is the silver bullet for all mental health difficulties that we face, but it is powerful and it has a place. And that's when we set about the journey of saying, look, there should be something tailored for Africa. And that is how Vimbo was born. And we developed that just as an idea in 2020, which we then took further. We conducted research on our initial version to make sure that it works, that it's effective, because when we're building for Africa, it doesn't mean we just do what we want. We still want to build a high quality and effective product that also respects the human and the fact that we're dealing with vulnerable people. So we conducted that research, and we've been active since in this space here.
Tafi, that's very detailed and well thought out business plan. You mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy. For most people, and to myself, that's a mouthful. Would you like to just explain how your platform offers self-guided programs based on cognitive behavioral therapy, and maybe start by just trying to define what that actually means? And I think it's usually abbreviated CBT. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So
yes,
it is
and
abbreviated.
Could you also just in line with that, could you also explain how these programs are personalized to meet individual needs?
So it is often summarized to be CBT, and it's a form of skill building that's intentional and that is structured. So you are really gradually building skills over time. So I think we live in a world where overnight fixes are over-promised, and we use the word hack a lot. So people are trying to hack this or hack that. And the promise is that consume this, and tomorrow you will be fine. And that's not what CBT offers. CBT rather says that if you want to change how you think, it takes time, but with repetition and with practice, the art, the science rather, I should say, of psychology says that you will change your brain and we've heard of the term neuroplasticity, which is that ability of the connections of the brain to actually reorder and reform based on learning and based on the practice of that learning. And that gradual process essentially is what results in lasting change. So we're building skills in a very intentional way and in a very gradual way over time. That skill could be around how you identify where your gaps are in terms of maybe a negative thinking pattern that emerged when you were 15. You told yourself once when you were 15 that I'm so stupid. And then you repeated that mantra for a decade. And then what have you done to the connections and the wiring of your brain? So CBT is about, similarly, through practice and repetition of positive behaviors, which are specific and proven through science, you can reverse and you can actually change. Similarly to how you created the situation, you can actually uncreate the situation through practice of the techniques over time, basically. So it's not for everyone, because some people are put off by the idea that I have to wait a period, maybe 2 months to 3 months, to really feel the change I want. But for other people, they might resonate more and might actually be tired of the hacks. Maybe they're in year 9 of their 10 years of feeling these difficulties or not having yet had something tangible, So that's what we offer, and those are the skills that people interact with through our platform.
Amazing, Taffy. Taffy, for a chartered accountant, you are so eloquent in these mental health issues. Given this scientific backing of your programs, Taffy, could you delve into some of the research findings, especially those in partnerships with South African, I think it's called South Africa Depression and Anxiety Group?
Mm-hmm.
Could you just understand what the research findings are, the basis on which you then develop your programs?
So the South African Depression and Anxiety Group is an amazing organization. They are based in South Africa and very much focused on how to provide access to crisis. A lot of it is their crisis services through free telephone lines. And before the pandemic, they were taking about 500 calls a day to their crisis lines. And then after the pandemic started in 2020, very quickly they were taking over 2,000 calls into their crisis lines. And I'm not sure what the latest number is. So definitely COVID had a big impact on people starting to identify with this topic around mental health. But all that to say that they are very active and very well-established players in trying to create access for the common person to mental health assistance. So I think anyone who is also just wanting to, they say one of the best ways to help your mental health is actually by giving. So I think another way to assist your own mental health is actually to look at people like South African Depression and Anxiety Group, who are really with a lot of volunteers, with their own resources, and really just driven by their passion, are helping thousands of people essentially a day to access help who don't have the affordability to do so. So I think, definitely look up South African Depression and Anxiety Group. There's ways to donate on their website, and they make it very clear that a very small donation, I can't remember the exact amount, but a very small donation can cover the cost of X number of calls from ordinary people who are in crisis. Some of these people might actually be in a point of, when we say crisis, we often talking about suicidal risk. They could be in a moment of suicidal risk when they come to call those services. So if you want to help your own mental health, another way is to actually help other people's mental health by giving in the ways that we can, So essentially we partnered with this amazing organization to conducting our research study and getting an understanding of the safety. We were testing the safety, the effectiveness of our platform, of our proposed intervention. And we were very happy to see that we were able to have 53% of people who were in a moderate clinical level of difficulty, and who also stayed on for long enough. We were able to see those people enter into a recovery, which was also clinically significant. So essentially, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to say, can we help you out of real difficulty? Because we are trying to, I think, have that meaningful impact on those people who have been waiting, 5 to 10 years, haven't dealt with their difficulties, maybe have tried a few things which didn't hit home. So that's where we operate, and that's what we were happy to see through that collaboration.
Thank you, Taffy. So I also imagine that one of the ways for you to measure the impact of vimbohealth.com is to get feedback from the users, from companies and employees. I'd be interested to just get an idea of what sort of feedback you've had over the years.
Yeah, no, we've had a lot of feedback from, and it goes both ways, because there's no silver bullet in mental health. So definitely for some people, they just feel like it's too much work. You're asking me to do a lot, but unfortunately, maybe they're not in the right place, or maybe we're just the wrong tool. But then the people with whom we resonate find a life change. People are empowered in themselves to make lasting changes. So they find the information gives them a new language to understand their difficulties, but also tools that they can use. So we've had feedback around people just saying they found it to be a less intrusive way of help. So that's addressing that idea of stigma, and then also people who people who then had the way of dealing with or helping others in their family. So one particular user talking about how it's helped them to help their son. So they found the skills from themselves, but it also helped them to notice certain patterns in their child, and to suggest certain things to their child that could also help them, basically. So that empowerment is what we talk about when we say what is mental health assistance, what is getting quote unquote help. It's actually quite empowering, and that's a lot of what we get from the people for whom it resonates and who find it useful.
With mental health being a universal concern, Tafi, do you have plans to expand Vimbo's services beyond South Africa? If so, what adaptations are you considering to cater for the different cultural or societal contexts?
We have things in the works. Some of which we've revealed, some of which we're waiting for that golden moment to turn them out. But no, we are focused really on the African context. Not to say that it doesn't resonate with other arenas, because I think sometimes people don't think about the reverse, whereby there are ideas and concepts that come from Africa that are positive and beneficial to someone who's living in London. From Zimbabwe, we say Hunu is the way of being. In South Africa, they call it Ubuntu, which is concepts that people have heard of, but they never actually considered that what happens if I, more than that, actually start to understand these concepts, apply them. So we do feel that coming out of this African context, there are things that we can do for people who are in these different settings of the UK and so forth, which are useful. I'm going to digress only to touch on something you mentioned earlier, which is the cultural aspect of mental health. And it's just one of the things that we know within the magic of the African culture is the power of community. And that's something that is not really been sold to the world in terms of them understanding how they can also get this benefit. You know very well, being from Zimbabwe, that no one goes through hardships and difficulties by themselves. The family gathers together, and it's not the family in the sense of the nuclear family. It's the family in the sense of the extended family rallies together, because a burden shared is a burden more than halved. Half is actually nowhere near what we do, because we divide it into 1%, where 100 people get involved in uplifting
the safety net for
and I think that that has in a context of mental health, that's a very powerful thing, that you feel like you're not alone. When there's difficulties, you help others. When there's difficulties for yourself, others help you and lift you up. So I think there is something to be said for how can we also get through transmitting these ideas and encouraging people to reach out more, to connect more with those in their kinship. How can we improve mental health globally, right? We have concepts from Eastern philosophy that are positive, that have become things that people adopt. What are the concepts from our African philosophy that are actually useful on a global basis? And I would argue that Ubuntu and our way of being in community with each other. I am because you are, that concept, that philosophy. How can others sort of globally, a person sitting in London benefit from that. And my experience, just speaking to the London context as well,
Yes.
Is that you get these very highly populated cities that are also very highly lonely cities. So people are brushing shoulders with 1,000 people a day just getting to work. But then their experience of life is very isolated. They feel alone, you know, a lot of times. And some of what's missing is that connection. And how do you get that? So, yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on that. I don't know what your thoughts are. Also, I would be interested to hear from a perspective of someone who's experienced both cultures.
That is true. So you are right that in London alone there are close to 10 million people, but it's very easy to be isolated in this big city. I come from a very small rural south of Chipinge in Zimbabwe village. If I were to guess, Taffy, there may be 300 people. But we close rank when there's an issue. We do come together as a community when there's an issue. You essentially have a tacit and written agreement with the community that you can administer discipline by way of telling off a child who's not your own child. For as long as they are within that community, effectively, you have this responsibility to take care of one another. And as a result, you can never really go off the rails without your neighbors noticing. And it tends to be a situation where they'll notice it early enough and they'll intervene and give you and provide the right help that's required. The only issue is how effective is that help? Is it kwenda kunganga, the witch doctors? Is it to go in the traditional route? I think those are some of the challenges that you are coming head on with as you push out Vimbo Health across the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the use of technology. I find technology as both promising and yet complex when it comes to privacy and data security. How do you ensure that Vimbo Health remains accessible and at the same time giving people the comfort of knowing that their privacy and data security is secure?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to treat data security not just from a legal perspective, but I think from the human rights perspective. So we've been very active, actually very early on, when we were in our, as they say in the startup world, in our minimum viable product phase, which is kind of like your prototyping phase. We were already building in how do we respect people's data, how do we respect people's data rights. So I think the main thing to realize is it comes down to an ethical obligation. So there's the legal obligation is this high, and then the ethical obligation. I think it's important to prioritize that and to go further than the legal requirements. So the laws are kind of set out by things like GDPR in terms of the good practices for managing people's data. And then I think what's important is to always try to exceed that. So we do always try to exceed that, to put the rights around sharing in the user's hands, and obviously maintain secure infrastructure ourselves, so that what comes into us, ultimately a lot does have to come into us, but the idea is that it stays locked in basically and is not going outside without sort of a very explicit approval from the person for that use case, if you like. So that's my thoughts on it. That there's the law, and then I think it comes down to the ethical obligation of you as a company.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have to remember is that companies are people, and like people, there are good companies and bad companies in terms of their ethical and sort of moral makeup, which is why we really try to outwardly show that we are a good company by doing more, basically, and showing the user that you're in charge of this data.
Tafi, I'd like to find out from you any feedback or any impactful stories that stand out for you from users of Wimbo that just highlight the difference that the platform is making in our communities.
I think what we get a lot is essentially just people who have had no access, mostly because they couldn't afford to get help. So even if we don't fully help a certain person, the fact that they are now more aware that what they were going through is somewhat normal. What they were going through can be dealt with. For me, sometimes just someone having a plan, having a way forward in itself, that's very therapeutic, if you like. So whenever we see those, and we see it often, but whenever we see those situations and we get that feedback, for us, that's the ultimate win. It's not just about the percentage on the scale, did this or that, but the human experience of, for the first time, as simple as it may sound to someone who's interacted with their mental health, but that idea, for the first time, I realized, like a light bulb moment, that wait a minute, other people go through this. Wait a minute, it's not actually me. It's just that I don't have these certain 3 tools in my life because I just don't have them. Maybe I didn't develop the habit. Maybe I didn't have a mentor who told me how to keep a good diary. That's not overwhelming, and it's actually a question that I have to you as well, to say, even before you started thinking about your mental health journey, what are the tools that you would say were in your arsenal that you had that assisted your mental health?
Tafi, I'll be very honest with you. I did not have tools other than thinking that I had the self-will to do it myself. And I kept telling myself that, oh, no, look, Farai, you can get over this. Just get a grip and get on with life. And the more I tried to reinforce that way of thinking, it didn't help me at all. I think it actually got worse, because I would compare how I would have felt the day before to the next day, and I just felt that there was this downward spiral that I was on, and I came to the end of myself, Tafi, and I needed help.
Yeah. So here's the misconception there. So I agree with you, and I think that self-realization takes so much courage. But I'd also encourage you to see a perspective. And by the way, I'm not speaking as a psychologist. I always have to tell people I'm an accountant. Yeah. But I encourage you to think of the fact that you had some tools, but you needed more tools and other tools. And the tool that I know that you had was exercise, which is a mental health tool.
Yeah, but so one of the tools in your arsenal. I fell off the rails with exercising, Tafi. I fell off the rails with exercising, and I just couldn't get out of bed to even exercise. Even the thought of exercising just made me so tired. And that I love running, as you know. I love exercising. I love getting out and going for my marathons. But all that, I think I looked for intervention way beyond the point where exercising would have been something that I could do immediately, because I lost the motivation completely to exercise.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we say. So essentially, what comes first, the feeling or the exercise? So it's that idea of, by changing the behavior, you can then change the feeling. So you can actually have the behavior lead the feeling. Where, okay, I don't feel like exercise, but by exercising, you will feel better afterwards, sort of thing. So that idea of following the plan, not really the mood in the moment. But at least you had that awareness of, because we gymmed together and things like that. So at least I'm encouraged that you'd have that awareness when you do decide to exercise. you have a place to go, you have an awareness. Okay, these are the 1, 2, 3 things I can do. I'll pick one. So I would say you had that skill. Maybe you had stopped using that tool, but at least you knew where to reach for it when you need it. So yeah.
And the other thing, Taffy, that did not help me is that I developed these wrong skills of masking it. I would keep this away from the people who I love the most and who love me the most, and I just didn't open up. And as a result, it just kept getting worse and worse because I was just focusing on hiding the fact that I needed help. Taffy, our platform is aptly named Break the Cycle Today. What can someone do today to get started on this journey, Taffy?
Yeah, I think people can join our waiting list. I'll give a link here because we have some exciting things happening in the very near future where people can actually now access us on an invited basis. So I'll be happy to make that available to your audience so that they can enjoy
Amazing.
that. And then I think, the first step is quite rightly what you said, action, because sometimes action precedes the change in feeling. If we wait for it to arrive, where we are in that golden moment, then we might be waiting a long time. Getting those legs moving to do a action, whether that action is going for a walk, whether that action is getting up and picking up the phone and calling and speaking to someone who you just have not spoken to for a long time, whether it's a family member, whether that action is reaching out and saying, okay, I'm going onto the NHS website because I'm lucky enough to live in London, which has a lot, and I'm just going to see what's available. So I think action precedes feeling, and it's important to, even if you feel like even if it feels like an outer body experience, it's best to just do it because good will always come from it.
Amazing. Taffy, could you just give me an idea of who Taffy was 5, 10 years ago before you stumbled on these tools that you now use compared to how your life has transformed since you discovered these tools or since you embarked on these tools?
Yeah, no, and for me, I always use the frog in boiling water analogy. Not to say that I had a terrible pre-existence for 10 years. It's definitely not the case. I really had a lot of positive moments, enjoyed life. But like a frog in boiling water, the water starts cold. The temperature is very slowly and gradually increased. So it's only at a certain moment in time that then you feel, okay, perhaps too much. So that's sort of how I see it, and I was just lucky that at that point in time I was in a place where the resources were made available to me. So I really feel more for people who are at that point in time and have nothing available to them, which is the majority of, unfortunately, people globally and more so in Africa.
No, Taffy, I really appreciate you taking time to come to talk to us on Break the Cycle today. And the underlying or the overarching theme of this platform is to just try and give people tools that they may need on a day-to-day basis. If they identify any patterns that they are interested in breaking, I believe Vimbo Health is one such tool that they could use. And I thank you for taking the time to come and see us here. And we appreciate your input. Is there anything else, Taffy, that you want to share before we check out?
And thanks for doing this for others. I think in that spirit of Wunu, we know that it helps others to just see a face and amongst black males, sometimes to see black males who are able to talk about the topic with each other. Just realize the idea of what it means to reach out and communicate on this. So thank you for creating this platform.
Taffy, thank you for being the very first guest on breakthecycle.today. And I look forward to having you back here, Taffy, at some point. And would love to just dive a little bit more into the personal stories. I would love to share my own stories, and then we can just exchange notes and see who can be helped with that information. So I'm quite open when it comes to sharing my personal experiences with mental health. So again, Taffy, thank you very much. It's been breakthecycle.today. Check out.